Sometimes the family you're meant to have isn't the one you planned for. It's the one that finds you when you're brave enough to open your heart again. The rain tapped against the window of Dr. Meyer's office as Sarah Wilson clutched the armrests of her chair. At 34, she'd spent the past 5 years in this familiar cycle: hope, procedures, disappointment, repeat. But something about today felt different. Final. "I'm sorry, Sarah," Dr. Meyer said, her voice gentle but firm. "We've exhausted all options. Your condition is permanent. You won't be able to conceive a child." The words hung in the air, clinical and cold, despite the doctor's compassionate delivery. Sarah had suspected this outcome for months, but hearing it confirmed turned possibility into certainty, hope into grief. "Are you sure?" Sarah whispered, though she already knew the answer. "There's nothing else we can try?" Dr. Myers reached across her desk and took Sarah's trembling hand. "I know how much this means to you, how hard you fought, but continuing would only cause you more physical and emotional pain, with no chance of success." Sarah nodded mechanically, her mind already drifting to the nursery at home, painted soft yellow 2 years ago, filled with a crib, changing table, and stuffed animals that had never known a child's touch. Daniel had stopped going into that room months ago, but Sarah still found herself standing in the doorway each morning, imagining the life that should have been there. "Thank you for everything," Sarah managed, gathering her purse and jacket. "I should go. My husband will be waiting to hear." But Daniel was on a business trip in Chicago. The truth was, Sarah couldn't bear to sit in that office a moment longer, watching sympathy form crinkles around her doctor's eyes. The drive home took Sarah past Willowbrook Park, where mothers pushed strollers along tree-lined paths and toddlers squealed on swings. She'd avoided this route for years, but today she deliberately turned down Maple Street, forcing herself to look. A young mother was kneeling, wiping ice cream from her daughter's chin with a tissue and laughing. Sarah watched for a moment too long, her car idling at the stop sign, until a honk behind her jolted her back to reality. This is it, she thought. This is what acceptance feels like driving past a life you'll never have and finally admitting it to yourself. At home, Sarah walked directly to the nursery and sat in the rocking chair, surrounded by the artifacts of a dream that would never materialize. Her hand traced over the stuffed elephant Daniel had bought when they first started trying. "For good luck," he'd said with that boyish smile she'd fallen in love with in college. She allowed herself to cry then, really cry, not the hopeful tears after another failed treatment when she told herself, "Next time, it will work next time." These were the tears of an ending, of letting go. Her phone rang, cutting through her grief. Sarah almost didn't answer, but years of hoping for miracle calls from doctors had trained her to always pick up. "Hello? Is this Sarah Wilson?" an unfamiliar voice asked. "Yes, this is she. Mrs. Wilson. This is Mercy Hospital. You're listed as the emergency contact for Mia Lawson." Sarah sat up straight, her personal pain immediately receding. "Mia? What's happened?" "There's been an accident. Miss Lawson was brought in an hour ago. She's in critical condition and—" the voice hesitated. "She's asking for you. She's very insistent about seeing you right away." "I'll be there in 15 minutes, Sarah said, already moving. The hospital corridors seemed endless as Sarah followed a nurse to the ICU. Her mind raced with questions. Mia had been her best friend since college, the free spirit to Sarah's planner, the dreamer to her pragmatist. They'd been inseparable until 3 months ago, when Mia had somewhat withdrawn after the birth of her daughter Emma. Sarah had attributed it to new motherhood, though it had stung when Mia declined her offers to help with the baby. "She's in here," the nurse said, pausing outside her room. "The doctor will be in shortly to explain her condition. She's been sedated for pain, but she's lucid." Sarah nodded, steeling herself before entering. Nothing could have prepared her for the sight of vibrant, laughing Mia, now deathly pale, connected to machines that beeped and hissed, maintaining the fragile thread of her life. "Mia," Sarah whispered, approaching the bed. "I'm here." Mia's eyes fluttered open, recognition bringing a weak smile to her face. "Sarah, you came." "Of course I came," Sarah said, carefully taking Mia's hand, mindful of the IV. "What happened?" "Drunk driver. Hit my side of the car." Mia's voice was barely audible. "Emma wasn't with me. She's at the sitters." Relief washed over Sarah, followed immediately by guilt for feeling relieved when Mia was lying here broken. "The doctors will fix you up," she said with forced brightness. "You'll be chasing after Emma in no time." Mia's grip on Sarah's hand tightened with surprising strength. "Listen to me. I need to tell you something important." She took a labored breath. "The doctors already told me. Internal bleeding they can't stop. Punctured lung. Other things." "No." Sarah shook her head, denial rising. "No, they can operate." "Sarah," Mia interrupted, her gaze suddenly intense. "I don't have much time. I need you to promise me something." A cold dread settled in Sarah's stomach. Anything. Emma. Take care of my Emma. Mia's eyes filled with tears. Don't let her go into the system, please. Sarah froze. What about your parents? She asked, though she already knew the answer. Mia's parents had disowned her when she decided to keep her baby as a single mother. No family left, who cares? Mia confirmed. Just you. You're the only one I trust. A tear slid down her temple. I've always seen how you look at her, how natural you are with her. Mia, I don't know if I can. You've always been meant to be a mother, Sarah, Mia interrupted, her voice growing fainter. I should have told you before. I named you her guardian in my will months ago. The paperwork's in my apartment, top drawer of my desk. The lawyer's card is with it. Sarah's mind raced. Daniel. What would Daniel say? They'd discussed adoption years ago, but he'd been resistant, always wanting to try one more treatment instead. And now, after today's news, but looking at Mia's pleading eyes, Sarah couldn't say no. Not to her dying friend, not to the baby she'd held and loved since birth. I promise, Sarah whispered, squeezing Mia's hand. I'll take care of Emma. I'll love her like she's my own. Relief softened Mia's features. She is yours now, she murmured. Tell her about me someday. Tell her I loved her more than anything. I will, Sarah promised, tears flowing freely now. I'll tell her every day. They sat in silence for a few minutes, Mia's breathing becoming more labored. Then she spoke again, her voice so faint Sarah had to lean closer to hear. The blue hippo is her favorite. She won't sleep without it. Sarah nodded, memorizing this detail like it was sacred text. Blue hippo. Got it. And she likes when you sing You Are My Sunshine, but only the first verse. The rest makes her cry. Mia attempted a smile that turned into a grimace of pain. I should get the doctor, Sarah said, alarmed by Mia's pallor. No, Mia held her hand tighter. Stay with me, please. Her eyes drifted to the window, where late afternoon light cast long shadows. I always loved sunset. Seemed right somehow. Sarah followed her gaze, noting with a chill how the golden light seemed to be reaching for Mia, ready to take her away. She wanted to pull the blinds shut, as if that could stop what was coming. Sarah? Mia's voice was barely audible now. I'm here. Thank you. Two simple words, weighted with everything left unsaid between them. Sarah sat with Mia as the sunset faded to dusk, holding her hand as the spaces between her breaths grew longer, until finally, with one last exhale, Mia was gone. Sarah continued holding her hand long after the doctors came, unable to process that her vibrant friend was now just a body, growing cold beneath hospital sheets. Eventually, a kind-faced social worker led Sarah to a quiet room and explained what would happen next. Emma was still at her regular sitter's home, where she could stay overnight. Child services would be notified, but given Mia's legal arrangements, they could begin the process of transferring guardianship to Sarah immediately. Would you like to get Emma tomorrow morning? The social worker asked. Or do you need more time to prepare? The question snapped Sarah back to reality. Tomorrow. Emma would need a place to sleep tomorrow night. She'd need diapers, formula, clothes. I'll pick her up in the morning, Sarah said with certainty that surprised even herself. I just need tonight to get everything ready. The social worker nodded, handing her a card. Call me if you need anything. This is a lot to process all at once. Sarah drove home in a daze, her mind cycling through practical concerns to avoid confronting the enormity of what had just happened. She'd need to convert the home office into a nursery. No, she couldn't face dismantling the existing nursery yet. She'd need to buy a car seat. Did 3-month-olds need special food? She knew nothing. And Daniel? Daniel. Sarah pulled into her driveway and sat staring at the dark house. She needed to call him. This couldn't wait until he returned in 3 days. Sitting at the kitchen table, Sarah dialed his number, rehearsing what to say. He answered on the 4th ring, the sounds of a restaurant in the background. Hey you, I was just about to call. How did it go with Dr. Myers? Sarah took a deep breath. Daniel, something's happened. Something big. She told him everything. The final diagnosis, Mia's accident, the promise she'd made. You agreed to take her baby? Daniel's voice had an edge Sarah had never heard before. Without even calling me first? She was dying, Daniel. She made me her child's guardian months ago. What was I supposed to say? You were supposed to say you needed to talk to your husband. This isn't like adopting a puppy, Sarah. This is a lifetime commitment to someone else's child. The words someone else's child stung more than Sarah expected. Emma isn't just someone else's child. She's Mia's daughter. She's a baby who needs us. Needs you, you mean? I never agreed to this. Daniel, please, Sarah said, her voice breaking. I know this is sudden, but when you meet her, we'll talk when I get home. He cut her off. I need to process this. I can't do it over the phone in the middle of a business dinner. The line went dead before Sarah could respond. She stared at the phone, a chill settling over her. She'd expected shock, questions, even hesitation, but not this cold anger. He just needs time, she told herself. He'll understand when he meets Emma. Sarah spent the night in a whirlwind of preparation. She ordered a crib for next-day delivery, bought diapers and formula at an all-night supermarket, and cleaned the guest room that would become Emma's temporary nursery. By dawn, she'd created a space that was functional, if not beautiful. At 9 a.m., Sarah arrived at the sitter's house, a small bungalow with a well-tended garden. Karen, the older woman who had been caring for Emma since Mia returned to work, met her at the door with sad eyes. "I heard about Mia last night," she said, leading Sarah inside. "Such a tragedy. That poor baby." Emma lay in a portable crib, tiny legs kicking at the air. When she saw Sarah, her face broke into a toothless smile that pierced straight through to Sarah's heart. "Hi, sweet girl," Sarah whispered, lifting Emma into her arms. The weight of her, the perfect warmth, felt right in a way Sarah couldn't explain. Karen helped gather Emma's belongings, showing Sarah how to prepare her formula and explaining her schedule. "Mia always said you were the most responsible person she knew," Karen said as they packed the car. "She told me once that if anything happened to her, you were the only one she'd trust with Emma." Sarah swallowed against the lump in her throat. "I won't let her down." The drive home was surreal. Every few minutes, Sarah glanced in the rearview mirror at Emma, secure in her new car seat, staring wide-eyed at the world passing by her window. "It's just us now, little one," Sarah said softly, "but I promise you'll always know how much your mama loved you." The first day passed in a blur of diapers, bottles, and stolen moments of wonder as Sarah watched Emma sleep. By evening, she'd settled into a tentative rhythm, Googling baby care between feedings and calling the social worker twice with questions. As Sarah rocked Emma to sleep that night, singing "You Are My Sunshine" quietly in the dim room, a strange peace settled over her. For the first time since receiving her diagnosis, the ache of emptiness had disappeared. In its place was something new, a terrifying, exhilarating sense of purpose. "Your mama was right," she whispered to the sleeping baby. "I think I was meant to be your mother all along." The next 2 days established a new normal. Sarah called work and arranged for emergency family leave. She contacted Mia's lawyer and began the formal guardianship process. She even managed to meet with a funeral director to handle Mia's arrangements. Emma nestled against her chest in a baby carrier. By the time Daniel's key turned in the lock on the third day, Sarah had begun to hope. Emma was thriving in her care. Surely Daniel would see what she already knew, that this child belonged with them. But one look at his face as he stood in the doorway, staring at Sarah feeding Emma on the couch, told her everything. "So it's true," he said flatly. "You actually brought her home." "Daniel," Sarah began carefully, shifting Emma to her shoulder to burp her. "I know this is sudden, but—" "Sudden?" Daniel dropped his suitcase with a thud that made Emma startle. "You made a life-altering decision without me, and you call it sudden. What choice did I have?" Sarah kept her voice low, rubbing Emma's back soothingly. "Mia was dying. She had no one else." "That's not our problem." Daniel's voice rose and Emma began to whimper. "We've spent years trying to have our own child, and the very day, you find out you can't, you decide to bring home someone else's baby?" The cruelty of his timing hit Sarah like a physical blow. "I didn't decide anything," she said, struggling to stay calm for Emma's sake. "Mia named me guardian months ago. This was her dying wish." Daniel paced the living room, running his hands through his hair in frustration. "And what about my wishes? Did those factor into your decision at all?" "You're acting like I planned this," Sarah said, her own anger rising. "My best friend died 3 days ago, Daniel. This baby lost her mother. I'm doing what any decent person would do." "No," Daniel said, stopping to point accusingly at her. "You're doing what someone desperate for a child would do. You're using this tragedy to get what you've always wanted." Sarah stared at him, stunned by the unfairness of his accusation. "That's not true, isn't it?" Daniel laughed bitterly. "For years I've watched you obsess over having a baby. Every conversation, every decision, everything in our lives has revolved around getting pregnant." "Because you wanted a child too," Sarah protested. "We both did. I wanted our child," Daniel emphasized, "not someone else's problem." Emma began to cry in earnest now, responding to the tension filling the room. Sarah stood, bouncing gently to soothe her. "I need to put her down," she said tightly. "We can talk when she's asleep." Daniel watched her walk toward the guest room, his expression unreadable. "That's our home office," he said. "Not anymore," Sarah replied without turning around. An hour later, with Emma finally asleep, Sarah found Daniel sitting at the kitchen table, a tumbler of whiskey in his hand. He looked up as she entered, his eyes red-rimmed. Whether from emotion or alcohol, she couldn't tell. "I've been thinking about this situation while I was away," he said, his voice calmer but still distant. Ever since you called, actually. Sarah sat across from him, hope flickering faintly. And I think we need to be realistic. He took a sip of his drink. I've been rethinking our marriage since we got your test results. The words hit Sarah like ice water. What does that mean? Daniel wouldn't meet her eyes. It means I've always been clear about wanting children. My own children. A family that's really mine. A family that's... Sarah couldn't finish the sentence, the implication too painful to voice. You know what I mean, Daniel said. I'm 36, Sarah. I still have time to start over, to have the family I've always wanted. Sarah sat very still, feeling as though she were watching the scene from above, happening to someone else. You're talking about divorce. Daniel shrugged, the gesture so casual, it felt like another betrayal. I'm talking about accepting reality. You can't give me children, and now you've taken in someone else's baby, without even consulting me. So this is my fault? Sarah's voice rose despite her effort to control it. After 7 years of marriage, you're willing to throw everything away because I can't get pregnant, and because I refuse to abandon an orphan baby? Don't make this about morality, Daniel said sharply. This is about what we both want in life, and it's becoming very clear that we want different things. Sarah stood, needing distance from the stranger wearing her husband's face. The Daniel I married would never treat a child as unwanted. He would never abandon someone who needed him. Maybe you never really knew me, Daniel replied, finishing his whiskey. Or maybe losing all those babies changed us both. Don't you dare, Sarah whispered, her hands clenching into fists. Don't you dare use our losses to justify this. Daniel stood too, reaching for the bottle to pour another drink. Look, I didn't come home to fight. I came home to be reasonable. We need to talk about what happens next. Which is what exactly? I think you should find somewhere else to stay while we sort out the details. My parents have already said you can use their lake house until you find an apartment. The casual way he delivered this bombshell made Sarah's knees weak. You discussed this with your parents before talking to me? Daniel had the grace to look uncomfortable. I needed advice. They agree this is for the best. I'm sure they do, Sarah said bitterly. His parents had always been cold toward her, especially after the years of failed pregnancies. Margaret, his mother, had once asked if Sarah had considered her fertility before marrying her son. They're coming over tomorrow to help us figure things out, Daniel added, not meeting her eyes. You invited your parents to help kick me out of my own home? Sarah couldn't keep the incredulity from her voice. It's not like that, Daniel protested. They want to support us both during this transition. Sarah laughed, a hollow sound. Your mother has wanted me gone since the day we married, and now she finally gets her wish. A cry from the baby monitor interrupted whatever Daniel was about to say. Sarah moved toward the hallway, then paused to look back at him. That child in there just lost her mother. Her entire world changed in an instant, and unlike you, she had no choice in the matter. Sarah's voice was steady despite the storm inside her. I made a promise to my dying friend, and I intend to keep it. If that means losing you, then I guess I never really had you to begin with. As she walked away to comfort Emma, Sarah felt a strange combination of heartbreak and clarity. The man she'd loved for nearly a decade was choosing to walk away, rather than embrace an unexpected blessing. And somehow, despite the pain, she knew with absolute certainty that she was making the right choice. The morning brought no relief from the tension that had settled over the house. Sarah had spent most of the night in the makeshift nursery, dozing in a chair beside Emma's crib, unwilling to share a bed with the stranger her husband had become. When Emma woke at 6 a.m., hungry and wet, Sarah changed and fed her with the efficiency she'd developed over the past few days. As she burped the baby afterward, she found herself talking softly. We're going to be okay, you know. I have some savings. We'll find a little place of our own, and I'll figure out work, and somehow, we'll make this work. Emma responded with a contented gurgle, her tiny hand wrapping around Sarah's finger. The simple gesture brought tears to Sarah's eyes. See, you get it, she whispered. We've got each other now. Sarah dressed Emma in a yellow onesie with ducks that she'd found among the baby clothes from Mia's apartment. She was just fastening the last snap when she heard the front door open, followed by voices in the living room. Her in-laws had arrived, early of course. Taking a deep breath, Sarah lifted Emma to her shoulder and walked out to face them. Margaret Wilson stood in the center of the room, ramrod straight in her tailored pantsuit, while her husband Robert hovered near Daniel. All three turned as Sarah entered. So this is the child, Margaret said, her gaze fixed on Emma with something between curiosity and disapproval. This is Emma, Sarah corrected, instinctively holding the baby a little closer. My goddaughter. Yes, well. Margaret smoothed an invisible wrinkle from her sleeve. Daniel has explained the situation to us. Has he? Sarah looked at her husband, who was studying the floor with great interest. And what situation is that exactly? Sarah, please, Daniel finally spoke. Let's not make this harder than it needs to be. Robert cleared his throat. We understand this is difficult for everyone, but we believe Daniel is making the right decision. Which decision is that? Sarah asked, though she already knew the answer. The one where he abandons his marriage because I can't have children? Or the one where he throws out his wife for honoring a promise to a dying friend? That's not fair, Daniel protested. No, it's not, Sarah agreed. None of this is fair. Margaret stepped forward, her expression softening in what Sarah recognized as her attempt at sympathy. It never quite reached her eyes. Sarah, dear, we understand you're emotional right now, but you must see that taking in someone else's child, especially under these circumstances, is a major life decision that both partners should agree on. So your solution is for Daniel to divorce me rather than consider giving this baby a chance? Sarah couldn't keep the bitterness from her voice. Our solution, Margaret emphasized, is to help you both move forward in a way that causes the least disruption to everyone's lives. The least disruption, Sarah repeated flatly. Robert joined the conversation, his businessman's voice taking over. We've prepared a fair financial settlement. The lake house is yours for up to 3 months while you secure new accommodations. Daniel will continue to pay the mortgage here for now, and you'll divide your assets according to the prenuptial agreement. Sarah stared at him in disbelief. You've already drafted divorce terms? Preliminary discussions only, Robert assured her, as if this made it better somehow. Emma began to fuss, perhaps sensing Sarah's distress. As Sarah gently bounced her, Margaret watched with a frown. This isn't your child, Sarah, she said, her voice lowered as if explaining something to someone very slow. You can't just take someone's baby. I didn't take her, Sarah replied, struggling to maintain her composure. Her mother legally named me her guardian. There are papers. Papers can be contested, Margaret said dismissively. Surely there must be some blood relative who has a more legitimate claim. The implication stung. Mia had no family willing to take Emma, and since when is legal guardianship not legitimate? Daniel finally stepped in, placing a hand on his mother's arm. Mom, the guardianship isn't the issue here. He turned to Sarah. The issue is that you made this massive decision without me, and now you're choosing this arrangement over our marriage. I'm choosing this arrangement? Sarah laughed incredulously. You're the one giving ultimatums and planning divorces behind my back. What choice did you give me? Daniel countered. You brought a baby into our home without my consent. A baby who needed me. Sarah's voice rose. A baby whose mother died, Daniel. What was I supposed to do? Leave her to foster care when I promised Mia I would care for her? That's not my problem, Daniel shouted, causing Emma to startle and begin crying in earnest. Sarah turned away from them, focusing on soothing Emma, using the moment to collect herself. When she turned back, her voice was calm but firm. If caring for an orphan child is not your problem, then I don't think we have anything else to discuss. Margaret sighed dramatically. This emotional display isn't helping anyone. Actually, Sarah said, finding a strength she didn't know she possessed, I think it's clarifying everything perfectly. She looked directly at Daniel. If you're asking me to choose between you and Emma, that's not a choice at all. Daniel's face hardened. You'll regret this, Sarah. Playing mother to someone else's kid won't fill the void of not having your own. The cruelty of his words hung in the air. Robert looked uncomfortable, but Margaret nodded slightly, as if Daniel had finally said what she'd been thinking. I think it's time we sorted out your belongings, Margaret said briskly. Robert and Daniel can help carry things to your car. The next hour passed in a surreal blur. Sarah packed essentials for herself and Emma, clothes, toiletries, the few baby items she'd purchased, while Daniel and his father carried boxes to her car. Margaret supervised, occasionally suggesting what Sarah might need, with a condescension that made Sarah's teeth clench. As Sarah folded the last of Emma's onesies into a suitcase, Margaret appeared in the doorway of the nursery. You know, you could still change your mind, she said, her voice softer than before. Daniel would reconsider if you returned the child to proper authorities. Sarah continued packing without looking up. Emma is not an item to be returned, Margaret. She's a baby who needs love and stability, something I promised her mother I would provide. And what about your promises to my son? Margaret countered. The vows you took? Now Sarah did look up. Those vows included for better or worse. Daniel seems to have forgotten that part. Margaret's expression hardened. You'll regret choosing this child over my son. Sarah zipped the suitcase closed and stood. No, she said with surprising certainty. I don't think I will. When everything was packed, Sarah strapped Emma into her car seat and took one last look at the house she'd called home for 5 years. Daniel stood on the porch, watching her with a mixture of anger and something else. Regret, perhaps, or simple uncertainty. Where will you go? He asked as she prepared to leave. Not to your parents' lake house, Sarah replied. She'd already called her coworker, Rachel, who had immediately offered her spare room until Sarah could find an apartment. "I'll have my lawyer contact you about the rest." Daniel nodded stiffly. "I am sorry it ended this way." Sarah looked at him, really looked at him, and realized with startling clarity that she no longer recognized the man she'd married. "I'm not sorry," she said quietly. "Not about Emma. I'm only sorry I didn't see sooner who you really are." As she drove away, Emma sleeping peacefully in the back seat, Sarah felt tears streaming down her face. But beneath the grief and shock was something unexpected, a small, stubborn flicker of hope. She glanced in the rearview mirror at the tiny person who had upended her life in just 4 days. "It's just us now, little one," she whispered. "We'll figure it out." Rachel's spare bedroom was small but cozy, with just enough space for a portable crib and Sarah's suitcase. The generosity of her coworker, whom Sarah had known for only 2 years, stood in stark contrast to the rejection from her husband of 7. "It's not much," Rachel apologized, helping Sarah settle Emma's things. "But you can stay as long as you need to." "It's perfect," Sarah assured her, fighting back tears of gratitude. "I can't thank you enough." "Don't thank me yet," Rachel smiled, adjusting a stuffed rabbit in Emma's crib. "Wait until you've been woken up by this little one at 3 a.m. That first night in Rachel's home, after Emma finally drifted to sleep, Sarah sat on the edge of the guest bed and allowed herself to fully process everything that had happened. In the span of a week, she had learned she could never have children, lost her best friend, become a mother to an orphaned baby, and watched her marriage crumble. The enormity of it crashed over her in waves that left her gasping. She reached for her phone, scrolling to Daniel's number before stopping herself. What would she even say? Every conversation since Mia's death had only revealed how fundamentally different their values were. Instead, she opened her email and typed a message to her company's HR department, requesting information about extended family leave options. "One step at a time," she told herself. "Focus on what you can control." The next morning, Sarah woke to Emma's hungry cries and the smell of coffee wafting from the kitchen. After feeding and changing the baby, she found Rachel making breakfast, already dressed for work. "I made extra," Rachel said, sliding a plate of scrambled eggs toward Sarah. "Figured you could use the fuel." "You're amazing," Sarah said sincerely, balancing Emma in one arm while reaching for the food with her free hand. "So what's your plan?" Rachel asked, sitting across from her. Sarah took a bite of eggs, realizing she couldn't remember when she'd last eaten a proper meal. "Find an apartment, figure out childcare, go back to work eventually. Beyond that," she shrugged. "I haven't had time to think it through." Rachel nodded thoughtfully. "My cousin manages a small apartment complex about 10 minutes from here. Nothing fancy, but clean and affordable. Want me to call her?" Sarah felt a rush of gratitude. "Would you? That would be incredible." "Consider it done." Rachel checked her watch and stood. "I've got to get to work. Make yourself at home, and let me know if you need anything." Once alone, Sarah spent the morning researching childcare options, calling her bank to separate her finances from Daniel's, and talking to a lawyer recommended by Rachel's brother. By afternoon, she had a tentative plan forming, and the beginning of a to-do list that felt manageable, if daunting. "Progress, Emma," she told the baby as she changed her diaper. "We're making progress." Rachel's cousin Anita called that evening to offer Sarah a viewing of a recently vacated one-bedroom apartment. "It's small," she warned, "but the building has good security, and there's a nice park across the street." The apartment was indeed small, a compact living room connected to a galley kitchen, a bedroom barely large enough for a double bed, and a bathroom with chipped tiles, but a surprisingly good shower. The walls needed paint, the carpet had seen better days, but the windows were large, filling the space with late afternoon sunlight. "It's perfect," Sarah said, already imagining where Emma's crib would go. "When can I move in?" Anita smiled. Rachel explained your situation. "I can have the paperwork ready tomorrow, and you can move in by the weekend if you want." Sarah signed the lease the next day, using some of her savings for the security deposit and first month's rent. Rachel helped her shop for essentials, a futon for the living room, a small dining table, basic kitchen supplies. By Saturday, Sarah and Emma were settled in their new home, sparse as it was. That first night in the apartment, after putting Emma to bed in her new crib, assembled by Rachel's boyfriend, Sarah stood in the center of the living room, taking inventory. She had left behind most of the furnishings she'd shared with Daniel, bringing only personal items and necessities for Emma. The apartment felt empty, but also full of possibility, a blank canvas for the new life they were building. "We're going to make this work," she promised the sleeping baby through the monitor. Somehow, the weeks that followed established a new rhythm. Sarah applied for and received extended family leave from her company, giving her 3 months at half pay to adjust to her new role as Emma's guardian. The formal adoption process began, with Mia's lawyer helping navigate the complicated legal system. Daniel, true to form, had his lawyer deliver divorce papers within 2 weeks of her departure. Sarah found unexpected support from surprising places. Her neighbor across the hall, an elderly woman named Mrs. Chen, offered to watch Emma when Sarah needed to run errands. "I raised 4 children," she said matter-of-factly. "One baby is nothing." Rachel continued to be a lifeline, bringing dinner once a week and occasionally taking Emma for an hour so Sarah could shower and rest. And Olivia, a childhood friend who had drifted away during Sarah's marriage, reconnected after hearing about Sarah's situation. "Daniel was always kind of a jerk," Olivia declared during her first visit to the apartment, bouncing Emma on her hip. "But I didn't say anything because you seemed happy." "I thought I was," Sarah admitted. "Or maybe I was just so focused on having a baby that I didn't notice how conditional his love really was." Olivia studied her friend. "And now? Are you okay?" Sarah considered the question seriously. "Not yet," she said honestly. "But I will be. We will be." Finances were tight. Even with the half salary from her leave, Sarah had to be careful with expenses. Diapers, formula, and baby necessities consumed much of her budget. She sold her wedding ring to create an emergency fund, an act that felt both practical and symbolic, cutting the final tie to her old life. The routine of caring for Emma became both exhausting and fulfilling. Sarah learned the baby's cues, the difference between her hungry cry and her tired whimper. She discovered that Emma loved being sung to but hated baths, that she smiled most widely when Sarah made ridiculous faces, that she would stare transfixed at the ceiling fan for minutes at a time. "Your mama would be so proud of you," Sarah often whispered during late-night feedings, keeping her promise to keep Mia's memory alive. "She loved you so much, and so do I." Some nights were harder than others. When Emma was particularly fussy, or when the reality of single parenthood felt overwhelming, Sarah would feel panic rising, the certainty that she wasn't equipped for this responsibility, that she was failing Mia's precious daughter. During one such night, Emma refused to be soothed, screaming despite all Sarah's efforts. Exhausted after hours of walking, bouncing, and pleading, Sarah placed Emma safely in her crib and stepped into the bathroom, closing the door partially to muffle the cries. She sank to the floor, buried her face in a towel, and sobbed. "I can't do this," she whispered to the empty room. "I don't know how to do this." After allowing herself 5 minutes of despair, Sarah splashed cold water on her face, took a deep breath, and returned to Emma. She lifted the red-faced, hiccuping baby and held her close. "I'm sorry, sweet girl," she murmured. "I'm doing my best, I promise. We'll figure this out together." She began to hum, then sing softly, not "You Are My Sunshine," which had failed earlier, but an old lullaby her own mother had sung. To her amazement, Emma's cries gradually diminished to whimpers, then to the occasional hiccup, and finally to the steady breathing of sleep. Sarah stood there long after Emma had drifted off, afraid to break the spell by putting her down. The simple victory, finding what soothed this tiny person, felt monumental. "See?" she whispered. "We figured it out." 6 weeks into their new life, Sarah received an unexpected call from Daniel's lawyer. The divorce was proceeding smoothly. Daniel wasn't contesting the division of assets they'd agreed upon through their attorneys. But there was a new development. Daniel wanted to sell the house. "He's asking if you'd like to buy him out of his share," the lawyer explained. "Otherwise, it will go on the market next month." Sarah stared out her apartment window at the park across the street, where mothers pushed strollers along winding paths. The house she'd shared with Daniel had been their dream home once. Spacious, in a good school district, with a yard perfect for children to play in. Now those features seemed especially poignant. "Can I think about it?" she asked, though she already knew she couldn't afford the mortgage alone, not with the added expenses of raising Emma. "Of course. He's giving you first right of refusal as a courtesy. Let us know within the week." A courtesy. Sarah almost laughed at the formality of it all, how quickly 7 years of marriage had been reduced to legal terms and courtesies. That evening, as she fed Emma her bottle, Sarah allowed herself to really think about Daniel for the first time in weeks. The anger had faded somewhat, leaving a hollow sort of sadness for what might have been. She tried to imagine an alternate reality where Daniel had embraced Emma, where they had become the family Sarah had always wanted, but the image wouldn't form. The truth was, Daniel's rejection had revealed fundamental differences between them that might have surfaced eventually, even without Emma's arrival. "We're better off," she told Emma, who watched her with solemn eyes as she drank, "even if it doesn't always feel that way." 3 months into their new life, Sarah's leave was ending. She had found a daycare within walking distance of her apartment that had an opening for Emma, had established a routine that mostly worked, and had even managed to paint the apartment's dingy walls a cheerful yellow. The divorce was nearly finalized, the house was on the market, and Sarah was preparing to return to work. The night before her first day back, Sarah sat on the floor beside Emma, who was now 6 months old and learning to sit up on her own. The baby toppled sideways, giggling when Sarah caught her. "You're getting so big," Sarah marveled, helping Emma right herself again. "Your mama would be amazed." At the mention of Mia, Sarah felt the familiar pang of grief. She still missed her friend desperately, still found herself reaching for her phone to text Mia when Emma did something adorable. The loss remained raw, even as life moved forward. Emma babbled happily, a stream of consonants that had recently begun to sound more intentional. Sarah responded as if they were having a real conversation. "I know, it's very exciting. And yes, I'm a little nervous about tomorrow too." Emma reached for a soft block, concentration furrowing her tiny brow as her fingers closed around it. "That's it," Sarah encouraged. "You've got it." The moment felt profound somehow. This ordinary triumph, this simple joy. Sarah realized with surprise that despite the circumstances that had brought them here, despite the losses and struggles, she was happy. Not always, not perfectly, but genuinely. "We're going to be okay," she told Emma, believing it fully for the first time. "Better than okay. We're going to be amazing." The next morning, Sarah dropped Emma at daycare, forcing herself not to linger as the kind caregiver took the baby from her arms. Emma immediately became fascinated with a colorful mobile hanging above the infant area, barely noticing as Sarah slipped away. Walking to work, Sarah felt simultaneously lighter and heavier, relieved to be returning to the adult world of marketing campaigns and team meetings, yet already missing Emma with an intensity that surprised her. Is this how all working parents feel, she wondered? This constant pull in two directions? Her colleagues welcomed her back warmly, many of them now aware of the dramatic changes in her personal life. Her boss, Michael, pulled her aside after the morning meeting. "We're glad to have you back," he said sincerely, "and I want you to know that we can be flexible if you need adjustments to your schedule. Single parenting isn't easy." Sarah blinked back unexpected tears. "Thank you. That means a lot. I was raised by a single mom," Michael said simply. "I know what it takes." By lunchtime, Sarah had already checked her phone a dozen times for messages from the daycare and had shown Emma's photo to anyone who expressed interest. By afternoon, she was deep in a project meeting, her professional brain re-engaging fully for the first time in months. By evening, she was rushing to pick up Emma before the daycare closed, her heart racing with anticipation. The baby's face lit up when she saw Sarah, tiny arms reaching upward in a gesture that made everything, the stress, the exhaustion, the juggling act, worth it. "Hey, sweet girl," Sarah said, gathering Emma close. "I missed you so much." That night, after Emma was asleep, Sarah opened her laptop and, on impulse, started a blog. She titled it The Unexpected Mother and wrote her first post, a candid account of her journey from infertility to single motherhood through an unexpected promise. She didn't expect anyone to read it. The writing was for herself, a way to process everything that had happened. To her surprise, people did read it. Friends shared it on social media, and strangers began commenting, many of them sharing their own stories of unexpected parenthood, adoption, or single parenting. Within weeks, Sarah found herself part of an online community of people navigating similar challenges. "You should write a book," Olivia suggested one evening as she helped Sarah fold laundry. Emma was now 7 months old and determined to crawl, practicing by rocking back and forth on her hands and knees on a blanket nearby. Sarah laughed. "When would I have time? Between work, Emma, and occasionally remembering to eat, my days are pretty full." "I'm serious," Olivia insisted. "Your blog posts are helping people. You've got almost 1,000 followers now." "It's still surreal," Sarah admitted. "I never expected anyone to care about our story." "People relate to resilience," Olivia said, watching as Emma finally managed to lurch forward a few inches. "And speaking of resilience, I think someone's about to be mobile." Sarah turned to see Emma's triumphant expression as she discovered her new ability. "Oh my God," she gasped, grabbing her phone to record the moment. "Em, you're doing it." As Emma practiced her new skill with determined concentration, Sarah felt a wave of bittersweet joy. Mia should be here for this, she thought. She should be seeing her daughter's first crawl. That night, after documenting the milestone on her blog, Sarah added a private note to the journal she kept for Emma, a record of memories and thoughts she would share with the girl when she was older. "Today you crawled for the first time," she wrote. "You were so proud of yourself, and I was bursting with pride too. Your determination reminds me of your birth mom. She would have cheered the loudest today. I promised to cheer doubly loud for both of us, for all the milestones to come." Life settled into a new normal. Sarah's days were structured around Emma's schedule, her apartment gradually filling with baby gear and toys. The divorce was finalized, the house sold, with Sarah's portion of the proceeds providing a modest financial cushion. Daniel had moved to Chicago permanently, maintaining minimal contact through their lawyers. Emma continued to thrive, growing from a baby into a toddler with a distinct personality, stubborn, curious, and surprisingly funny. She learned to walk at 11 months, tottering around the apartment with reckless confidence. Her first word was book, followed closely by mama, a term that still brought tears to Sarah's eyes, even as it came with the complicated knowledge that she was Emma's second mother. Sarah's blog gained followers, leading to opportunities she hadn't anticipated, speaking at a conference for adoptive parents, contributing to an anthology about alternative paths to motherhood, connecting with other women navigating similar journeys. "I never planned any of this," she confessed to Olivia on Emma's first birthday, watching as the toddler smeared cake across her face with gleeful abandon. "That's usually how the best stories go," Olivia replied, snapping photos of the messy celebration. "Unplanned, unexpected, and so much better than what you thought you wanted." Looking around at the small gathering, Rachel and her boyfriend, Mrs. Chen, colleagues who had become friends, and other mothers from daycare, Sarah realized they had built something precious from the wreckage of her previous life, a community, a family of choice. Later that night, after the party had ended and Emma was asleep in her crib, now moved to the living room to make space in the bedroom for her growing collection of toys, Sarah stood at the window, looking out at the park across the street. A year ago, she had been devastated by her diagnosis, then broken by Daniel's rejection. Now, somehow, she had found a kind of wholeness she hadn't known was possible. Her phone buzzed with a text from Olivia. "You're amazing, you know that? What you've built for Emma and yourself this year is nothing short of miraculous. Mia would be so proud." Sarah smiled, knowing it was true. From the baby monitor came the soft sounds of Emma's steady breathing, the rhythm that had become the heartbeat of Sarah's new life. "We did it, Mia," she whispered to her absent friend. 1 year down, a lifetime to go. Spring arrived with a burst of color in the park across from Sarah's apartment. Emma, now 15 months old, delighted in the flowers blooming along the walking paths, pointing and babbling enthusiastically during their evening strolls. "Yes, that's a daffodil," Sarah would explain patiently. "Can you say daffodil?" "Da-da," Emma would respond, reducing most multisyllable words to this simpler sound. Life had found a rhythm. Sarah had been promoted at work and negotiated a flexible schedule that allowed her to work from home 2 days a week. Emma thrived at daycare, making friends and developing new skills daily. The small apartment had become a true home, filled with books, toys, and the evidence of a happy toddler. On a mild Tuesday evening, Sarah was preparing dinner while Emma played with blocks on the kitchen floor. The doorbell rang, an unusual occurrence, as most of their visitors texted before coming over. "Who could that be?" Sarah asked Emma playfully. "Shall we go see?" Emma toddled alongside her to the door, clutching Sarah's pant leg. Through the peephole, Sarah saw a man in military uniform, perhaps collecting for veterans, she thought. She opened the door, keeping Emma partially behind her out of habit. The man was younger than she'd expected, maybe 30, with closely cropped dark hair and tired eyes. He shifted nervously as the door opened. "Can I help you?" Sarah asked. "Are you Sarah Wilson?" His voice was deep but hesitant. "Yes," she confirmed, increasingly puzzled. The man's gaze dropped to Emma, who was peering curiously around Sarah's legs. Something in his expression changed, a flash of emotion Sarah couldn't identify. "My name is Jake Lawson," he said quietly. "I'm Emma's biological father." Sarah felt as though the floor had dropped away beneath her feet. Her arm instinctively moved to pull Emma closer. "That's not possible," she managed to say. "Mia never—" She said Emma's father wasn't in the picture. The man, Jake, nodded slightly. "She wouldn't have known how to reach me. I was deployed when she—" He trailed off, clearly uncomfortable. "May I please come in? Just to talk?" Sarah hesitated. Every protective instinct urged her to close the door, to shield Emma from this stranger claiming to be her father. But something in his expression, a mix of uncertainty and hope, made her pause. "How do I know you're telling the truth?" she asked. Jake reached into his pocket and produced a folded paper. "I have a copy of Emma's birth certificate. I found it when I was trying to locate Mia after coming home 3 months ago. That's when I learned about her accident." Sarah took the paper with trembling fingers. There it was, Jacob Allen Lawson listed as the father. She'd never seen Emma's original birth certificate. All her legal documents had come through Mia's lawyer after her death. "Please," Jake said softly. "I just want to talk." Sarah nodded stiffly, stepping back to allow him in. Emma, sensing the tension, clung to her more tightly. "I'm going to put her in her playpen with a snack," Sarah said, Make yourself comfortable." In the kitchen, Sarah's mind raced as she arranged apple slices on Emma's favorite plate. How had Mia never mentioned Emma's father by name? Why had she said he wasn't involved? And what did this man want now? After settling Emma with her snack, Sarah returned to find Jake standing awkwardly in the living room, still holding his cap in his hands. "Please sit," she said, gesturing to the sofa while taking the armchair opposite. "You said you were deployed?" Jake nodded, perching on the edge of the couch. "Afghanistan. I was there when Emma was born. Mia and I," he paused, gathering his thoughts. "We weren't together long, maybe 2 months. Then I got deployment orders and she ended things." "She never told you she was pregnant?" Sarah asked, her heart racing. "No." A shadow crossed his face. "I tried to keep in touch, but she stopped responding to my messages. I figured she'd moved on. When I came back 3 months ago, I wanted to at least say hello, see how she was doing." He swallowed hard. "Instead, I found out she died over a year ago." Sarah watched him carefully, looking for any sign of deception. "How did you find me?" "It wasn't easy," Jake admitted. "I went to her old apartment first, but new people lived there. The neighbor remembered her, told me about the accident, mentioned she had a baby. I couldn't believe it." He ran a hand over his short hair. "I checked public records, found Emma's birth certificate with my name on it. Then I tracked down Mia's lawyer, who eventually told me about the guardianship arrangement." Sarah's mouth had gone dry. "What do you want?" she asked bluntly. Jake's eyes darted to the playpen, where Emma was happily munching apple slices. "I don't know," he said honestly. "When I found out I had a daughter, that Mia had died, I just needed to see her, to understand." "She's not just a daughter," Sarah said, an edge creeping into her voice. "She's Emma. She's a person with a life and a routine and—" She broke off, fighting for composure. "I'm in the process of adopting her. I'm the only mother she remembers." Jake held up his hands. "I'm not here to disrupt her life. I swear. He looked at Emma again, his expression softening. "I just wanted to know her, to see her, at least once." Sarah felt torn between sympathy for this man who had just discovered his child and fierce protectiveness for the little girl who had become her whole world. "I need to know your intentions," she said flatly. "Are you planning to seek custody?" Jake looked startled. "No, God, no. I wouldn't." He shook his head vehemently. "I don't know the first thing about raising a child, and she doesn't know me. That would be cruel." Some of the tension left Sarah's shoulders. "Then what do you want?" Jake considered the question seriously. "Honestly, I'm not sure. When I found out about her, I felt this responsibility, like I needed to make sure she was okay at minimum." He met Sarah's gaze directly. "Now that I've found you, I can see that she is more than okay." Emma had finished her snack and was now babbling to herself, playing with a stuffed rabbit. Jake watched her, something like wonder on his face. "She looks like my sister," he said softly. "Same eyes." The simple observation, so personal and yet so innocent, broke through some of Sarah's wariness. "Would you like to see some pictures?" she offered cautiously. "I have albums." Jake's face lit up. "You do? I'd love that. Thank you." Sarah retrieved her laptop, opening folders of photos organized by month. These start from when she was 3 months old, right after. She didn't need to finish the sentence. For the next hour, Sarah clicked through images of Emma's first year, her first tooth, first steps, first birthday. Jake asked questions, listening intently as Sarah explained each milestone. His genuine interest was evident, his reactions those of someone seeing something precious for the first time. "You've done an amazing job with her," he said eventually, his voice thick with emotion. "Better than I could have, better than anyone could have expected." "I love her," Sarah said simply. "She's my daughter in every way that matters." Jake nodded. "I can see that." He hesitated. "Would it be possible? Would you consider letting me meet her properly? Not as her father necessarily, just as someone who cares about her?" The request was reasonable, far more so than Sarah had feared. Still, she felt protective. "I'd need to think about it. This is a lot to process." "Of course," Jake agreed quickly. "Take all the time you need. I'm staying in town for at least a few months. I just started a job at the VA hospital." "You're a doctor?" Sarah asked, surprised. Jake smiled slightly. "Combat medic. Now I'm working as a physician's assistant in rehabilitation services." The conversation shifted to safer topics. Jake's military service, Sarah's work, the neighborhood. Emma, losing interest in her toys, began to fuss in her playpen. "I should get her dinner started," Sarah said, rising. Jake stood immediately. "I'll get out of your way. Thank you for not slamming the door in my face." "I considered it," Sarah admitted with the ghost of a smile, "but I'm glad I didn't." At the door, Jake paused. "Can I leave my number, in case you decide?" He didn't finish the sentence, but he didn't need to. Sarah nodded, handing him her phone to enter his contact information. As he returned it, their fingers brushed briefly. "She really is beautiful," Jake said, glancing back at Emma, "just like her mother." Sarah wasn't sure if he meant Mia or herself, and she didn't ask. "I'll be in touch," she promised. After he left, Sarah leaned against the closed door, her mind whirling. Emma toddled over, raising her arms to be picked up. "Mama, up!" Sarah lifted her, holding her close, breathing in the familiar scent of baby shampoo and apple juice. "Oh, Emma," she whispered, "life is never simple, is it?" That night after Emma was asleep, Sarah called Olivia. "He seemed genuine," she explained after recounting the unexpected visit. "Not threatening at all, almost grateful." "What are you going to do?" Olivia asked. Sarah sighed. "I don't know. Legally, he has rights. He could contest the adoption if he wanted to, but he said he wouldn't." "People say a lot of things," Sarah replied. "Daniel promised to love me forever, remember?" Olivia was quiet for a moment. "True, but not everyone is Daniel." Sarah thought about Jake's face as he'd looked at Emma's photos, the mixture of wonder and regret, the careful way he'd asked to meet her. "No," she agreed finally, "not everyone is Daniel." After 3 days of careful consideration, Sarah texted Jake, suggesting they meet at the park across from her apartment on Saturday morning. "Emma is usually at her best early in the day," she explained, "but I'd like to keep the first meeting brief." Jake replied immediately, "Whatever works best for Emma. Thank you for this chance." Saturday arrived with perfect spring weather, mild sunshine, and a gentle breeze. Sarah dressed Emma in her favorite overalls and packed a bag with snacks, sunscreen, and the essentials for a morning out. "We're going to meet someone special today," she told Emma as she brushed her fine hair. "He knew your first mommy." Emma, more interested in the butterfly barrette Sarah was attempting to secure, just smiled. "Fly," she said, pointing. "Yes, butterfly," Sarah agreed. "Very pretty." Jake was waiting by the park entrance when they arrived, wearing jeans and a button-down shirt rather than his uniform. He looked younger somehow, less formal but more nervous. "Hi," he said, his gaze immediately finding Emma, who was holding Sarah's hand and studying him curiously. "Thanks for coming." "This is Emma," Sarah said, kneeling beside the toddler. "Emma, this is Mr. Jake. Can you say hello?" Emma regarded him solemnly before offering a tiny wave. "Hi." Jake's face lit up. He knelt to her level, keeping a respectful distance. "Hi, Emma. I like your butterfly." Emma touched the barrette proudly. "Fly." "That's right, butterfly," Jake agreed, glancing at Sarah with such genuine delight that she felt some of her anxiety ease. "There's a good playground this way," she suggested. "Emma loves the swings." The next hour passed with surprising ease. Jake followed their lead, watching as Emma explored the playground with the determined focus of a toddler discovering the world. When Emma allowed him to push her on the swing, his careful attention to her cues of more and stop impressed Sarah. "You're good with her," she observed when Emma was occupied with the sandbox. Jake shrugged. "I have nieces and nephews. Kids are pretty straightforward when you pay attention." "Not all adults understand that," Sarah replied, thinking of Daniel's impatience with children, his discomfort around them. "Military training helps," Jake said with a slight smile. "Observation skills, adapting to changing situations, following the lead of the person who knows the terrain better." Sarah found herself smiling back. "I never thought of parenting in tactical terms, but that's surprisingly accurate." When Emma began to show signs of fatigue, rubbing her eyes and becoming less adventurous in her play, Sarah announced it was time to head home for lunch and nap. "Can I walk you back?" Jake asked. Sarah hesitated only briefly before nodding. As they walked, Emma between them holding both their hands and occasionally jumping to be swung forward, Sarah found herself studying Jake more carefully. His attentiveness to Emma, the respectful way he'd followed Sarah's lead, the absence of any attempt to assert authority, all of it spoke to a character very different from what she'd feared. At her building, Jake knelt to say goodbye to Emma. "It was very nice to meet you," he said seriously. "Thank you for showing me the swings." Emma, in the direct way of toddlers, patted his cheek. "Bye-bye, Jake." His expression as he stood was one Sarah recognized, the look of someone who had just experienced the particular magic of a child's acceptance. "Thank you," he said to Sarah. "This meant a lot to me." "It went well," she acknowledged. "Better than I expected." Jake hesitated. "Would it be possible? Would you consider letting me see her again sometime?" Sarah had been considering this very question throughout the morning. "I think that would be okay," she said carefully. "Maybe next weekend, same time." The relief and joy on Jake's face was unmistakable. "That would be perfect, thank you." As he turned to leave, Sarah called after him. "Jake, would you like to see her baby album? The actual printed one, with photos from when she was first born? Mia made it." Jake stopped, visibly moved by the offer. "I would love that. More than I can say." "Next time," Sarah promised. I'll bring it to the park." After Jake left, Sarah carried a sleepy Emma upstairs, her mind working through the implications of the morning. She had expected to feel threatened by Jake's presence, to see him as competition for Emma's affection. Instead, she found herself moved by his obvious care for a child he'd just met, his respect for the boundaries she'd set. As she prepared Emma's lunch, she realized something unexpected. For the first time since taking Emma in, she wasn't alone in appreciating how special this little girl was. There was now someone else in the world who cared deeply about Emma's well-being, someone who could share in the wonder of her development. The thought was surprisingly comforting. The park meetings became a regular Saturday ritual. Jake would wait by the entrance, his face lighting up when he spotted Emma toddling toward him. Each week, he came prepared with something small, a pinwheel that spun in the breeze, bubbles that made Emma squeal with delight, a picture book about butterflies after learning of her fascination with them. Sarah brought the baby album as promised, watching as Jake studied each photo with reverent attention. His finger traced over an image of Mia, holding newborn Emma, his eyes suspiciously bright. "She was beautiful," he said quietly. "I wish I'd known. I wish I could have been there." "What happened between you?" Sarah asked, the question she'd been wondering since his first visit. Jake sighed, closing the album carefully. "Nothing dramatic. We met at a bar, hit it off, started dating. When I got deployment orders, I asked if we could try to make it work long distance. She said no, that she'd done the military relationship thing before and couldn't do it again." He shrugged. "I respected her decision. I was hurt, but I understood." "She never mentioned you were the father," Sarah said. "When she asked me to take Emma, she just said there was no family who could care for her." "In her mind, that was probably true," Jake replied. "She had no way of knowing I'd want to be involved, and her own family." He trailed off. "We're terrible to her when she decided to keep the baby," Sarah finished. "She told me about that." They watched as Emma examined a dandelion with intense concentration. "I want you to know," Jake said after a moment, "that I meant what I said that first day. I'm not here to disrupt Emma's life or challenge the adoption. You're her mother in every way that matters." Sarah studied him, searching for any sign of insincerity. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because I've seen how you are with her these past few weeks. Because I want you to trust that I only want what's best for Emma." He met her gaze directly. "And because I can see you still have doubts about my intentions." Sarah couldn't deny it. Despite the evidence of Jake's good character, a part of her still feared that he might change his mind, might decide to assert his paternal rights. "I appreciate your honesty," she said finally, "and I'm trying to trust your intentions. It's just, you've been hurt before," Jake finished, "by people who should have been reliable." The simple understanding in his words caught Sarah off guard. She nodded, unable to speak past the sudden tightness in her throat. "I lost my brother in Afghanistan," Jake said quietly. "He had a little boy who'll never really know his dad. That experience, it changes how you see family, how you value it." He watched Emma, who was now attempting to catch a butterfly. "I don't want to take her from you. I just want to be part of her life, in whatever way you think is best." In that moment, looking at Jake's open expression and hearing the sincerity in his voice, Sarah felt the last of her resistance crumble. This man wasn't a threat to their family unit. He could be an addition to it. "I think Emma would benefit from having you in her life," she said slowly. "Not just occasional visits, but regularly." Jake's expression brightened. "Really? You mean that?" Sarah nodded. "She should know her biological father, and you clearly care about her." "More than I thought possible," Jake admitted, "especially given that I've only known about her for a month." "That's how it works with kids," Sarah said with a smile. "They get under your skin fast." As the weeks passed, Jake's role in Emma's life expanded gradually. The park visits extended to include lunch afterward. Soon, Jake was joining them for dinner once a week, learning Emma's bedtime routine, becoming familiar with her favorite books and toys. Sarah observed with growing appreciation how natural he was with Emma, patient when she was cranky, enthusiastic about her small discoveries, consistent in the boundaries he helped maintain. He never tried to override Sarah's parenting decisions, always deferring to her expertise while offering his own observations thoughtfully. "He's not what I expected," Sarah confessed to Olivia one evening when her friend came over after Emma was asleep. "He's so respectful of both of us." "Sounds dangerous," Olivia teased, sipping her wine. "A good-looking military man who's good with kids and respectful of boundaries? You should definitely keep your guard up." Sarah rolled her eyes. "It's not like that." "Why not?" Olivia challenged. "You've been single for nearly 2 years. He's single, great with Emma, and clearly admires you." "He's Emma's biological father," Sarah pointed out. "That complicates things." "Only if you let it," Olivia replied. "From what you've told me, he's made it clear he supports your role as Emma's mother." The three of you could be a family unit without the romantic element. Or, she wiggled her eyebrows suggestively. Stop it, Sarah laughed, throwing a pillow at her friend. I'm not looking for romance. Maybe not, Olivia conceded, but sometimes it finds you anyway. 3 months after Jake's first appearance, Sarah's lawyer called with news. The adoption petition is moving forward, she explained, but the court has identified Emma's biological father and will require his formal consent before finalizing. Sarah's stomach dropped. I see. Have you had any contact with him? The lawyer asked. Sarah explained the situation, how Jake had found them, the gradual building of a relationship, his stated support for the adoption. That's actually ideal, the lawyer said, sounding relieved. If he's willing to give formal consent while maintaining a relationship with Emma, the court will likely view that favorably. It's the best of both worlds for the child. That evening, Sarah called Jake and asked if he could come over after Emma was asleep to discuss something important. He arrived promptly at 8, concern evident in his expression. Is everything okay? He asked as soon as Sarah opened the door. Is Emma all right? She's fine, Sarah assured him, sleeping soundly. This is about the adoption. Jake's shoulders relaxed slightly as he followed her to the living room. What about it? Sarah explained the lawyer's call. The court needs your formal consent before they'll finalize the adoption. Jake nodded, unsurprised. I figured that would be part of the process. You're okay with it? Sarah asked, studying his face carefully. With me legally becoming Emma's mother? Sarah, Jake said gently, you are Emma's mother. A legal document just confirms what already exists. He leaned forward, his expression earnest. I will sign whatever you need me to sign. I want what's best for Emma, and that's you. Relief washed over Sarah, followed by a wave of gratitude so intense it brought tears to her eyes. Thank you, she whispered. Jake smiled. Don't thank me. I should be thanking you for giving Emma such a loving home, for allowing me into her life when you had every reason to be wary. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment before Jake spoke again. There is one thing I'd like to ask, though. Sarah tensed slightly. What's that? Would you be open to me being legally recognized as her father? Not for custody purposes, he added quickly, seeing her expression. Just acknowledgement. Maybe even visitation rights that we define together. The request was reasonable, more than reasonable, given that he could have contested the adoption entirely. Still, Sarah needed to understand his full meaning. What exactly are you proposing? She asked carefully. Jake took a deep breath. I'd like to be officially recognized as Emma's father, with you as her legal mother having full physical custody. I'd like defined visitation rights, whatever you're comfortable with, and perhaps some input on major decisions like education or medical care, though with you having the final say. He was offering a compromise that would secure Sarah's position as Emma's primary parent while still acknowledging his biological connection, a solution that put Emma's interests first. That seems fair, Sarah said slowly. You are her father. She should grow up knowing that. Jake's relief was visible. Thank you. I promise I'll never give you reason to regret this. As he prepared to leave, Jake paused at the door. There's one more thing you should know. Sarah raised an eyebrow questioningly. I've been offered a permanent position at the VA hospital, he said. I've accepted. I'm staying in town, for good. The news settled over Sarah like a warm blanket. Emma would have her father in her life consistently, not just when his military service allowed. I'm glad, she said honestly. Emma will benefit from having you around regularly. Jake nodded, his expression softening. Not just Emma, he said quietly. Good night, Sarah. As she closed the door behind him, Sarah leaned against it, considering Olivia's teasing words from weeks earlier. Was there something developing between them beyond their shared love for Emma? The thought was both terrifying and somehow right. One step at a time, she told herself firmly. Let's get the adoption finalized first. But as she checked on Emma one last time before bed, watching the rise and fall of her tiny chest, Sarah allowed herself to imagine a future where Emma had both a mother and father who loved her, and perhaps eventually, each other. The adoption finalization hearing was scheduled for a Tuesday in late August, 8 months after Sarah had first welcomed Emma into her home. The courtroom was small and surprisingly warm, with wooden benches and morning sunlight streaming through tall windows. Sarah sat beside her lawyer, wearing a new navy blue dress she'd splurged on for the occasion. Jake sat directly behind them, his uniform pressed and perfect, having taken the day off to attend. Olivia and Rachel had come too, along with Mrs. Chen and a few colleagues from work, the chosen family that had supported Sarah and Emma from the beginning. When the judge called their case, Sarah stood, her heart racing. The proceedings were brief but emotional. The judge reviewed the documentation, noting Jake's formal acknowledgement as biological father and his consent to the adoption while maintaining his paternal rights. "This is an unusual arrangement," the judge commented, "but one that clearly puts the child's interests first. It's refreshing to see co-parents prioritizing stability and cooperation." At the end, the judge smiled. "Sarah Wilson, the court hereby recognizes you as the legal adoptive mother of Emma Grace Lawson. Congratulations to your family." The finality of those words, "your family," brought tears to Sarah's eyes. She turned to where Olivia was holding Emma, reaching for her daughter. "It's official, sweet girl," she whispered as she hugged Emma close. "You're stuck with me forever now." Jake approached, his own eyes suspiciously bright. "Congratulations, Mom," he said warmly. "Thank you for making this possible," Sarah replied, meaning it completely. They celebrated with lunch at Sarah's favorite restaurant, Emma charming everyone by attempting to feed cake to each person at the table. By mid-afternoon, Sarah was emotionally exhausted, but profoundly content, as she carried a napping Emma into their apartment. "Home sweet home," she murmured, laying Emma in her crib for her nap. "Our home, officially and forever." She had just settled on the couch with a much-needed cup of tea when her phone rang. The office number surprised her. She'd taken the day off for the hearing. "Hello? Sarah, I'm so sorry to bother you on your day off," Melissa from reception said, sounding uncomfortable. "But there's someone here asking for you. He's been waiting for almost an hour and refuses to leave a message." "Who is it?" Sarah asked, puzzled. "He says his name is Daniel Wilson. He says he's your husband." Sarah nearly dropped her mug. "Ex-husband," she corrected automatically, her mind racing. "What does he want?" "He wouldn't say, just that it's important and personal." Melissa lowered her voice. "Should I call security? He's being polite but very insistent." Sarah closed her eyes, trying to process this unexpected development. "No, don't call security. Tell him." She paused, considering her options. "Tell him I'll meet him at the coffee shop across from the office in 30 minutes. After hanging up, Sarah sat motionless, her tea cooling forgotten beside her. Daniel. After nearly 2 years of silence broken only by legal communications through their attorneys, he suddenly wanted to see her. Why now? What could he possibly want? She called Olivia, who arrived in record time to watch the still napping Emma. "Want me to come with you?" her friend offered, concern evident in her expression. Sarah shook her head. "I need to do this alone. Whatever he wants, I need to handle it myself." "Call me if you need backup," Olivia insisted. "I can have Rachel on standby too." The coffee shop was busy with the afternoon crowd when Sarah arrived. She spotted Daniel immediately, still handsome in his tailored suit, his hair shorter than she remembered, his posture conveying the same confidence she'd once found attractive. He stood when he saw her, an uncertain smile forming. "Sarah, thank you for coming." "What do you want, Daniel?" Sarah asked without preamble, remaining standing. His smile faltered. "Could we sit, please? I've ordered your favorite." He gestured to a chai latte waiting on the table. Sarah sat reluctantly, ignoring the drink. "I don't have much time. Emma will be waking up from her nap soon." "Emma," Daniel repeated. "The baby. She must be, what, almost 2 now?" 18 months, Sarah corrected. Today was her adoption finalization hearing, actually. Something flickered across Daniel's face. Regret, perhaps, or simply surprise. "Congratulations," he said after a moment. "I'm happy for you." Sarah studied him, trying to reconcile this polite stranger with the man who had delivered ultimatums and packed her belongings less than 2 years ago. "Why are you here, Daniel?" He took a deep breath. "I've been doing a lot of thinking. About us, about how things ended." "Things didn't end," Sarah pointed out. "You ended them when you chose to divorce me rather than accept Emma." Daniel had the grace to look uncomfortable. "I know. I made a terrible mistake." Sarah blinked, genuinely surprised. "A mistake?" "I was shocked and hurt when you made such a major decision without consulting me," he explained. "And I just received the news about your condition. I wasn't thinking clearly." "My condition," Sarah repeated flatly. "You mean my infertility, the medical reality that made me unworthy of remaining your wife?" Daniel winced. "That's not fair." "Isn't it?" Sarah leaned forward. "You gave me an ultimatum. You or the baby. You told me you wanted your own children, real children. Those were your exact words, Daniel." "I was angry," he protested. "People say things they don't mean when they're angry." Sarah shook her head slowly. "No, I think you meant exactly what you said. You just didn't expect me to choose the baby." Daniel shifted uncomfortably. "Maybe you're right. I thought you'd realize what you were giving up and change your mind." He met her gaze directly. "I didn't expect you to be strong enough to walk away." The admission hung between them, shockingly honest. Sarah sat back, absorbing it. "So why are you here now? After all this time?" Daniel sighed, running a hand through his hair in a gesture so familiar it gave Sarah an odd sense of déjà vu. "I've been seeing someone. It was getting serious, but recently I realized I've been comparing her to you. I can't move on, Sarah. I've been thinking that maybe we could try again. Sarah stared at him, momentarily speechless. After everything, the ultimatum, the divorce, building her new life, he expected her to simply welcome him back? Daniel, no, she said firmly. That chapter of our lives is closed, but we had 8 good years together, he pressed. I made a mistake, I admit that, but people deserve second chances. You're right, they do, Sarah agreed. And I gave Emma and myself second chances at a family. I'm not interested in going backward. Daniel's expression hardened slightly. Is there someone else? That guy at the courthouse today? The soldier? Jake is Emma's biological father, Sarah explained coolly. We're co-parenting. Just co-parenting? Daniel pressed. Sarah stood up, gathering her purse. My personal life is no longer your concern. I wish you well, Daniel. I really do. But we're done. As she turned to leave, Daniel reached for her hand. My parents ask about you. They miss you. The same parents who supported your decision to throw me out for adopting a baby? Sarah gently pulled her hand away. Please don't contact me again. Walking away, Sarah felt lighter than she had in months. The closure she hadn't realized she needed had finally come. 1 year later, Emma's second birthday party transformed Sarah's small apartment into a riot of color and sound. Balloons and streamers hung from every possible surface, and a homemade banner proclaimed, "Happy Birthday, Emma," in bright, messy letters, Jake's artistic contribution. More cake? Emma demanded, her face already smeared with frosting. I think you've had enough sugar for one small human, Sarah laughed, wiping Emma's cheeks with a napkin. Jake appeared with a gift wrapped in sparkly paper. One more present, princess. Sarah watched as Jake helped Emma unwrap a small stuffed elephant, a companion to the one he'd given her when they first met. She's growing up so fast, Olivia remarked, joining Sarah by the window. And so are you. Sarah raised an eyebrow. I'm pretty sure I stopped growing decades ago. You know what I mean, Olivia nudged her shoulder. You're different now, stronger. Sarah's gaze drifted to Jake, who was now giving Emma an elephant ride around the living room, making trumpeting noises that had her giggling uncontrollably. We're taking it slow, Sarah admitted quietly. After everything with Daniel, I needed time. And Jake? He's been patient, understanding. Sarah smiled softly. He says we already have the most important thing in common. As the afternoon light mellowed into evening, guests gradually departed until only Jake remained, helping Sarah clean up while Emma napped, exhausted from the excitement. Thank you for today, Sarah said, handing him a stack of plates. Emma had a wonderful time. So did I, Jake replied, his eyes meeting hers. You know, when I first came looking for you and Emma, I never expected this. This mess? Sarah joked, gesturing at the party debris. This family, Jake corrected gently. However unconventional. Sarah set down the trash bag she was holding. Is that what we are? A family? Jake stepped closer, his voice soft. If you want to be. The kiss, when it came, felt like both an ending and a beginning, the closing of one chapter and the opening of another. Later, as Jake said goodnight and promised to return for their planned zoo trip the next day, Sarah stood in Emma's doorway, watching her daughter sleep peacefully amid her new birthday treasures. We did it, Mia, she whispered to her absent friend. She's safe, she's loved, and somehow, so am I. In the quiet apartment, Sarah finally understood that families weren't defined by blood or by law, but by choice, by the daily decision to love, to stay, to build something lasting.